Study by V.T. Houteff. Sabbath, August 17, 1946. Given in Mount Carmel Chapel, Mount Carmel Center, Waco, Texas. My subject for this afternoon is questions and answers. Several of you have come to me lately with some questions apparently very important to you. For this reason, we shall devote a portion of this afternoon to answering them. The first of these questions is concerning the Lord's Supper. I shall not read the entire contents of the question, but only a sentence or two. Of course, we are not worthy to participate of the Lord's Supper, Brother Houteff, but neither were the disciples worthy. Now let's see. Just before the ordinance of humility, Jesus said to his disciples, "Ye are clean, but not all." One was not. Though Judas was unworthy, the ordinance could not longer have been put off, and so he thus partook of the sacrament, but immediately arose, went out, and did his devilish work. Afterwards his eyes were opened to the crime he had committed, and he hanged himself. The disciples, though, were as ready for the sacred service as they could have been up to that time. The Lord's Supper was ordained in remembrance of the Lord, not to cleanse them from sin, but from sinners, as is seen from the fact that Judas no longer walked with the disciples. Plainly, then, the celebrating of the ordinance brought blessing to the 11, but damnation to Judas. There have been a number of reform movements among us before and in our time. They, of course, all ordained the Lord's Supper in their midst, but it did not profit them, it did not make them eternal. They came into existence fast and went out even faster. Now, let us read from 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 17. Now, in this that I declare unto you, I praise you not, that ye come together, not for the better, but for the worse. The Corinthians were having controversies, causing divisions among themselves, so their getting together and breaking bread was not for the better, but for the worse. Now, verse 18. But first of all, when ye come together in the church, I hear that there be divisions among you, and I partly believe it. If we can only meet together for the worse, would it not be better to stay home? Let us see. Verses 27 to 30. Wherefore, whosoever shall eat this bread and drink this cup of the Lord unworthily shall be guilty of the body and blood of the Lord. But let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of that bread and drink of that cup. For he that eateth and drinketh unworthily eateth and drinketh damnation to himself, not disconcerning the Lord's body. For this cause many are weak and sickly among us, and many sleep. The Lord's bread and cup are to be taken by people only after they have examined themselves, after they see that they have complied with all the requirements of God, that they are not causing trouble, that their meetings together is for good, not for worse. Now, if we have reached the standard, then we should by all means ordain the Lord's Supper. But if we have not, then our instituting the ordinance of humility among ourselves would only be to our own damnation, not to our salvation. Our chief duty right now is not to urge the observance of the Lord's Supper, but rather to come up to the standard of perfection which the message of today, along with the message of yesterday, urges. And if we would avoid causing divisions among ourselves, we should never discuss the sins of any, nor pass judgment on them either. If we cannot right the matter with the ones at fault, then we had better either discuss it with no one at all, else follow the instruction given in Matthew 18, verses 16 and 17. But if he will not hear thee, then take with thee 1 or 2 more, that in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word shall be established. And if he shall neglect to hear them, tell it unto the church. And if he neglect to hear the church, let him be unto thee as an heathen man and a publican. We cannot lead the Lord. He is leading us. We of ourselves never know what is right and what is wrong unless we are told. Easy enough. Then whatever we are told, that is what we will do. So far, our message has not brought the ordination of the Lord's Supper to our attention, but it is pleading with us to part from the abominations, to cast aside all our idols, to put away all our private ideas and opinions, to wholeheartedly return to the Lord. The message, moreover, teaches that we should remain in the Mother Church, and as long as we stay with her, there is perhaps no need of ordaining the Lord's Supper among ourselves before the hour comes for the separation of the penitent from the impenitent, as taught by the types, by the Passover in Egypt, and by the Passover on the night when Judas was never again to walk with the 12. So much for the first question. Several have said to me, Brother Houteff, when we meet those who oppose us, we do not know how to answer their questions. We become confused. We do not know whether we are right or whether we are wrong. They mainly confuse us with our interpretation of the trumpets and the seals. You who are having to answer questions, just say to your opponents, one of us is wrong for sure. We cannot both be right, to say the least, and so let us look into it. I would tell them that we teach the trumpets exactly as John saw them. For example, look at our illustration of the horses. They are pictured exactly as John saw them. Are they not? They must be and are interpreted accordingly by us Davidians. Ask them if inspiration does not say that the horses had heads of lions and serpents for their tails, that smoke, fire, and brimstone came out of the horse's mouth, that the horsemen had breastplates of fire and of jacinth and of brimstone. They must, of course, answer in the affirmative. Then let them tell you by what authority they changed the appearance of inspiration's horses to the appearance of Arabian horses, and changed the appearance of inspiration's horsemen to the likeness of Turks. Let your opponents tell you what makes them think that they are right and that we are wrong, since their picturing of the horses and horsemen is nothing like John's, but ours is exactly like John's. Oh yes, the answer they will give is that the scene was too far away from John, and therefore he could not possibly have seen where the smoke, fire, and brimstone actually came from, that he thought they came from the horse's mouth, when in reality they came from the horse's gun. Wonderful idea! What? John could not see accurately from a distance of 10 feet? But these self-appointed interpreters can see more perfectly from a distance of 2,000 years? They may not at a glance see that our interpretation is right, but they should know that theirs is wrong, if they should know anything. Yes, and you will hear even more babble about the heads, the tails, and the horsemen. Tell them that their kind of reasoning is not refuting our interpretation of the trumpets, no, nor anyone else's interpretation of them either, but that it is discrediting the dependability of the Scriptures and destroying faith in the correctness of the Bible. We might as well ask, if John could not see what the horses looked like, or where the fire, smoke, and brimstone came from, then how can he see anything right? How could he see that every living thing died in the sea, as he wrote in Revelation 16:3? Talk about adding to and taking from the Scriptures, Revelation 22, verses 18 and 19. That kind of interpretation beats anything. No, we do not have to go further. Be our interpretation right or wrong, theirs is not only fallacious, but it is actually blasphemous. And then they tell us that Elder Uriah Smith was inspired to write the book Daniel and Revelation, and that therefore the trumpets and seals must be correct. If Sister White did say so, why did she not herself believe and preach them? Now, what about the 7 seals? The Laodiceans still teach that the seals began with the resurrection of Christ, about 70 years before John had the vision of the seals. Let us see what the voice said. Revelation chapter 4, verse 1. And after this I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven. And the first voice which I heard was as it were of a trumpet talking with me, which said, Come up hither, and I will shew thee things which must be hereafter. The voice spoke emphatically that the things which John was about to be shown had not taken place, were not taking place, but were to take place somewhere later in the stream of time. If they were to take place after John had the vision, about 96 AD, not in the first century of the Christian era, then what right does anyone have to teach contrary to what the voice said? Do they mean to say that the Lord too was unable to see from a distance? The theory is again exploded, but be we right or wrong? Someone asks, what about Revelation 12, the woman clothed with the sun? Does she symbolize the church from the Pentecost on, clothed with the gospel Son of Christ? We shall see. When the dragon attacked the woman, she was already clothed with the sun, and her child, the Lord, was not yet born. She therefore existed before Christ and his gospel. The Christian church did not give birth to Christ either. She herself came into being years after his birth. She came into existence by his own efforts. The theory is as logical as it is to say the chicken is hatched before the egg is laid. Only a first-class Laodicean may fail to see that the Laodiceans, in their blindness, are garbling the scriptures. Let me now close my discourse by answering yet this one question. Is the slaughter of Ezekiel 9 going to take place in the world or in the church? Is it the 7 last plagues, or is it the purification of the church? Let us hear Ezekiel speak. Ezekiel 9 verses 1, 4, and 9. He cried also in mine ears with a loud voice, saying, Cause them that have charge over the city to draw near, even every man with his destroying weapon in his hand. And the Lord said unto him, Go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and that cry, for all the abominations that be done in the midst thereof. Then said he unto me, The iniquity of the house of Israel and Judah is exceeding great, and the land is full of blood, and the city full of perverseness. For they say, The Lord hath forsaken the earth, and the Lord seeth not. The angels have charge of the city, Jerusalem, not the cities, not the world, and not Babylon. Only the uninformed person would even try to make himself believe that the terms Jerusalem, Judah, or Israel mean, or as much as imply, the world. They always mean the church, and always will mean the church. For that is what they are. No well-informed person would dare say that the slaughter of Ezekiel 9 is the same as the 7 last plagues, Revelation 16. The plagues fall on Babylon. Moreover, the angels of Ezekiel 9 slay everyone who does not have the mark, but the plagues do not. Inspiration does not even say that anyone died from any of the plagues, save that every living thing died in the sea, and that only by the effects of the second plague. Does not Sister White say Ezekiel's slaughter is the same as the plagues? It is popular to take refuge in Sister White's writings. Moses' writings, too, were used as a convenience to refute Christ's teachings. That is all the good the Jews got out of them, though, and it is certain that if the Laodiceans continue in their present state of mind, they perhaps shall not get even as much of Sister White's writings as the Jews did of Moses' writings. Read what she says in Testimonies, Volume 3, page 267, also Volume 5, page 211, also The Great Controversy, pages 656 and 657. There is, therefore, no need at all for any of you becoming confused. The confusion belongs to the opposers of the truth. But why anyone would try to deceive himself by hanging a doubt on every hook or crook he can find is beyond my understanding. Those who do it should be able to tell us, but I doubt that they can. I think I've time for another question. This question is asked in 6 parts, and I shall answer it accordingly. Number 1. Does the prophecy of Nahum predict World War II or some other war? To find our answer, let us give attention to what Nahum says. Nahum chapter 2, verse 1. He that dasheth in pieces is come up before thy face. Keep the munition, watch the way, make thy loins strong, fortify thy power mightily. Nahum predicts that the one who starts the war, he that dasheth in pieces, will be prepared before he starts the war. But the opposing power, Assyria, will not become prepared until after the war begins. For after her enemy comes before her face, then it is that she fortifies her power mightily. Moreover, the means of travel and transportation in the day the war preparations are made and the war itself fought are perfectly described by the prophet. Nahum 2, verses 3 and 4. The chariots shall be with flaming torches in the day of his preparations. The chariots shall rage in the streets. They shall jostle one against another in the broad ways. They shall seem like torches. They shall run like the lightnings. The chariots shall be with flaming torches in the day of his preparation. The chariots shall rage in the streets. They shall jostle one against another in the broad ways. They shall seem like torches. They shall run like lightnings. It is well known that World War II is the only war in history for which the preparations described by Nahum were made and used while the chariots, vehicular traffic, moved with their unprecedented speed of lightning, at the rate of hundreds of miles per hour, as fast as sunlight moves around the earth, as fast as sound, and while motor traffic in the city and the countryside, in the streets and in the broadways, jostle one against another. Yes, all these signs of the times, the signs which mark the time the war is fought, leave no room for doubt. They all, in perfect terms, certify that Nahum predicts World War II. Furthermore, we who have the message of the hour, now during the war, know that no people other than us Davidians have ever been commissioned to proclaim the message of the purification of the church, the end of the wicked in her midst, the message to which Nahum urges the people to give heed. Let us read Nahum 1, verse 15. Behold upon the mountains the feet of him that bringeth good tidings, that publisheth peace. O Judah, keep thy solemn feast, perform thy vows, for the wicked shall no more pass through thee, he is utterly cut off. Here is inspiration's own counsel, direct to all who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Let each now decide whether he will put confidence in the voice which inspiration itself recommends, or in a voice which a human being recommends. Question number 2. Who is he that dasheth in pieces? Let us read. He that dasheth in pieces is come up before thy face. Keep the munition, watch the way, make thy loins strong, fortify thy power mightily. Nahum 2 verse 1. Note carefully that after the one who he that dasheth in pieces comes before Assyria's face, then it is that Assyria makes preparation to meet him. Then it is that she makes her loins strong, fortifies her power mightily. Now, since we know that Great Britain and France were not prepared to fight Hitler, and since we know that the Allies began to prepare themselves mightily after Hitler started to dash in pieces, the truth stands out clear as crystal that he who dasheth in pieces is none other than the one that was ready at the commencement of the war, Hitler. Question number 3. Who does Nahum say will win the war? He that dasheth in pieces, or Assyria? Nahum's answer is that both of them are to fall, although the greater emphasis is placed on the fall of Assyria. Speaking of him who dasheth in pieces, the prophet declares, Nahum 2 verse 5, He shall recount his worthies, they shall stumble in their walk, they shall make haste to the wall thereof, and the defense shall be prepared. To recount his worthies implies that the number of worthies, captains and generals, along with his fine army, is diminished, and hence the need of recounting. Moreover, the scripture plainly shows that his worthies were to stumble on their walk, that they were to make a blunder on their march to victory, and exactly thus did the prophecy meet fulfillment. Hitler stumbled by waging war against Russia while he was in war with Great Britain. That critical moment of his life was Hitler's greatest folly, and too the fall of his worthies being mentioned before the fall of Assyria is mentioned, the prophecy reveals that he that dashed in pieces, Hitler, was to fall first. Question number 4. Why is Hitler's title He that dasheth in pieces? Well, that is all Hitler did. He began to dash in pieces from the very inception of the war. None were able to stand against him. Hitler, therefore, actually earned his title. The whole earth is by his war broken in pieces, not only geographically, but politically and economically as well. Even the whole English Empire is tottering, and the ominous squeaks of its inevitable crashing are becoming louder and louder with each passing day. Yes, Hitler deserves that title in more than one way. Question number 5. Does not Nahum's prophecy teach that Assyria is to fall altogether? Yes, that is just what it does teach. Very evidently, then, Nahum's prophecy forewarns that World War II is not as yet completed. The world, too, knows that it is not. What will start the war going again? Well, it has never actually stopped. What will the end of it be? Just what Nahum says. Assyria is to fall completely. Question number 6. How is she to be broken down, and by whom? We do not as yet know for sure. What do the tracts teach concerning the subject? The tracts teach, with but one exception, just what these answers to the questions teach. What is the exception? The tracts do not say as much. They do not say definitely who he that dasheth in pieces is, nor do they say that World War II is Nahum's war for certain. And while Tract 14, Warner's forecast, does say Hitler's army too nevertheless shall fall. It does not say whether his army will fall first or last. See comments on Nahum 2, verse 5. That's page 12. Track number 12, Will Germany or England Win the War, published 2 years before track number 14, does, however, say, it now being apparent that the tabernacles of his palace are supposed to represent holiness, and that the woman's riding the beast denotes her settling the world's social, economic, political, and religious problems, the truth is clear that the present Christian governments are to be reorganized and ruled by an ecclesiastical head, not by Hitler. The tracts, brother, sister, know their business. Wisely, they do not tell everything, but what they do tell, they tell straight, though we cannot.